I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
Osa, hello, friend. Denise, hello, people.
Hi.
How are you, Justina?
Hello.
Awesome. This is, okay, there we go. Just tell me when and we'll,
Well, go ahead. It's 5:32. We might as well begin.
okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Bear with me. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to be drinking a lot of water. I'm going to just go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Debbie Nash. I am the president of AFSCME Local 155H for D60 FoodWorks Nutrition Services. We want to just kind of tell you how this all began and what started and where we're at now. I think there's a lot of information that people don't know about us and the companies that they're looking into, and I hope we can answer any questions you have. Back in December, my vice president of the union, Jen, and myself and our union rep, Sherry, went to a meeting with the director of HR, the executive director of HR, and the executive director of facilities. They wanted to discuss something with the leadership before we went on Christmas break. Bob Lawson told us that we were doing a great job feeding the students, especially the curbside meals, since COVID hit. That the board applauded us for the job that we had done at one of their meetings. But he says now that the director of nutrition and the executive assistant of nutrition had retired, and then we are looking at one of our coordinators to retire, they thought it was a good time to look into having an external source run nutrition services. They told us it was a 6-month process. It would start in January to June. Certain things would happen as the months rolled along. They said it was something that they felt like they needed to do, but it wasn't anything that we had done that they were doing it. They just thought now was the time to look into it. I'm lost my place here trying to thought. We decided as a group to not let any of our coworkers know and ruin their Christmas. We just kind of sat there in disbelief going, we can't believe you guys you're talking about this after all the stuff we had done with COVID and, really worked our tails off. Well, a little farther down the line, we started going on Fridays and handing out flyers to let the public know what was going on at the schools that we were handing meals out at. And we had the news stations come to do a story on us. When they approached the district for a comment, Dalton Sprouse had then he stated, this process is something something they do periodically to make sure they are spending the district's money in the best way possible to benefit the students. Sorry. We don't understand that. D60 FoodWorks doesn't understand that. All of District 60 FoodWorks monies come from the food service fund, basically government subsidies. Employees' payroll, benefits, food, etc., all comes from the food service fund. Nothing comes from the District 60 budget. Nothing. We also have partnerships with other agencies serving kids, like the Boys and Girls Club, the Pueblo Library District, Parks and Rec, El Pueblo History Museum. And then in our schools, we have the school pantries, weekend food backpacks, and the fresh fruit and vegetable program, which we run in our elementary schools. All of that is paid for out of the funds. When COVID hit us back in March of 2020, we were out there on the front line preparing and handing out meals, not only to our students, but we jumped in and helped D70 when one of their employees tested positive for COVID, and we served their students for 2 weeks. Then on top of that, we served over 45,000 meals to senior citizens of Pueblo. We also helped Care and Share when they had their food distribution. They loaded it to our warehouse, we brought it to our schools, and we handed it out to those people who were coming through our line to pick up meals, so they had even more food to help them out. We care about our kids. We care about our community. We are a successful internal contractor that has been in the black for 25 years. Why do they even want to look at changing us? We don't understand. Who is benefiting from it? It's not the students. These companies buy in bigger bulk at cheaper prices. They don't care about the quality of the food. These 60 FoodWorks employees, if they do this, we will lose our pension, our benefits, and lower salaries. We already took a cut when the district went to the 4 days. We got nothing from that. And now this, we have nothing to benefit from this. So who does? It feels like, you guys are doing a great job, and this is the thanks you get. And it's just like, wow, what do we do? Not fair. If by doing this, they're saying, oh, things have not changed, you could get your jobs back, keep your seniority. If that's the case, if everything's going to be the same, why are they looking to change us? Why do it at all? So that's kind of a little bit of where we're at. I don't know if anybody has any questions or no? Okay.
Thank you.
That's my little spiel.
You had also mentioned that they had said something about visiting the kitchens. Did you?
Oh, yeah. When back in December, when they told us they were going to do this, they wanted to let us know that they were looking into this because people from the companies would be walking through our kitchens, and they didn't want us to feel like they were doing things behind our back. So they just wanted to give us a heads up that, we're only looking into this. It's nothing definite. Want to see what they have to offer. So thank you. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and pass the time to Miss Leslie Lopez. She was born and raised here in Pueblo, a former D60 student and a graduate of USC here in town. And she is currently a faculty member of the University of Hawaii, and she works for the Center for Labor Education and Research. Miss Leslie.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, hello everyone and welcome. I'm here today to talk about how privatizing public services negatively impacts the community. But first I'd like to thank the panelists, Denise Torres, Tomas Martinez Ortega, Justina Carter, and Josette Jaramillo. I also see Juan Espinosa here, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for helping bring everyone together today. I'd also like to thank Sister Sherry Hatton at AFSCME, Council 18, and of course, Sister Debbie Nash, FoodWorks Local 155H. As we discuss public food service workers specifically, and unions in general, it's important to remember why we're here and why unions are important to working people. Unions help give our labor dignity, like providing standards in our workplace and better wages, but equally important are legal protections. So point 4 here places us on equal footing with our employer at the bargaining table and during the grievance process. And point 5 helps us protect our communities. For example, when my dad worked at the slaughterhouse, Alpha Beta on Santa Fe, he remembers unionized workers feeling empowered to call OSHA if the company tried processing meat that looked diseased or unsafe. So people forget the critical role that unionized workers have in protecting our communities. Collective bargaining also brings more stability to public services by providing important protections like seniority. Now, seniority simply represents experience, right? So it's just common sense that people who know what they're doing, that have been doing it for a length of time, tend to provide better services. This is a snapshot of what Colorado looked like in 1970. 19.5% of workers were unionized statewide. And at its peak, I believe Colorado was over 21%. But let's look specifically at Pueblo. As you can see, a large percentage of unionized workers were public workers in the state and federal sector. But the biggest difference is we had more unionized jobs in the private sector, like CF&I, Alpha Beta, packing, the Teamsters, and the trades. State Hospital at its peak employed 8,000 AFSCME members. Pueblo Depot at its peak employed 8,000 workers, represented by AFGE and NAGE, I believe after Kennedy made it possible for federal workers to unionize. And at the depot, 50% of those workers were Hispanic. CF&I at its peak had 25,000 steel workers. And most famously, there was, the 1959 steel workers strike. My dad also participated in that, and it was his first job, and I believe his first strike. Also in the 1970s, 70% of Puebloans were homeowners. Today, that number has dropped to 55.8%, and economic studies point to 1970 as the peak of minority home ownership specifically, and working class home ownership generally, which is the biggest single indicator of wealth or stability. So I slid the timeline to 2014 here, which illustrates the decline nationally. Here it shows Colorado at 9.5%, but it's even less than that today. It's at 7.4% belonging to unions, 8.2% represented by unions, and I'll explain the difference of that in a minute. But let's briefly look at how we got here in Pueblo specifically. So we have various, historical and economic events that contributed to the decline in unions. Obviously, the largest private employer, CF&I, closed. And then we had something called the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights in '92 that converted public services to self-sustaining enterprises, opening the door to private prisons and prison labor. Then NAFTA exported even more manufacturing jobs. Today in Pueblo, the median household income is $38,388, yet you would need to make at least $42,000 to afford a home. Just out of curiosity, I'd like to do an activity, and let's see if this will work. I'm going to launch a poll here. So if you would just, if this poll popped up for you, try to guess which country has the highest union density. Okay, just a few more seconds, and I'm gonna end it. There we go. So let's see, you have Canada here at the highest union density. So let's go to the next slide. Actually, Sweden, and yes, on that list, Canada was the highest. But Sweden has, and most of the Nordic countries actually have extremely high union density because collective bargaining is built into their public and private sector, like labor laws. They have something called sector-wide bargaining, where all food service workers have a set wage regardless of where they work. And so as a result, McDonald's workers in Norway make something like $22, $24 an hour, and that's because of sector-wide bargaining. So back to the maps. In addition to the factory closings that happened in Pueblo in the 80s and 90s, there was also a calculated attack on unions led by the wealthiest families and corporations in the US. So I'm obsessed by the map on the left because it shows the largest, employers in each state. And so notice that the state where Walmart is not the largest employer are primarily public employees who are unionized. And if you contrast the map where Walmart's the largest employer with the states with the lowest union membership, it paints a pretty clear picture. So as we know, what happened in Pueblo happened pretty much everywhere else, and the decline of unions correlated with the decline of the middle class. Okay, so back to, remember what I said earlier, that Colorado had 202,000 workers represented by unions, but 182,000 who belong? That's because of the Janus court decision. So Mark Janus was a California state worker. And by the way, less than a month after he won the Supreme Court case, giving him the right to not pay union fees while still benefiting from the union contract, Mark announced that he was going to quit his job for a position with the very think tank that helped him bankroll his case. So to understand the attacks on public workers, it's important to know who ALEC is, or the American Legislative Exchange Council. So in this graphic, the people with the U's on their shirt, they're the ones who pay dues. And this, let's say this is a single bargaining unit. Well, the people with the U's pay their dues, and as far as Colorado is concerned, those are the 7.4% belonging to unions. The 202,000 who are represented by unions basically means that 20,000 don't pay dues, but benefit from the union negotiated contract. So, but they do not give back their raises. The Janus decision essentially made it legal for public union members who benefit from negotiated contracts to not pay unions for collective bargaining for the work they do. ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, invites elected legislators to fancy conferences and hands out cookie cutter legislation, which they then take back to their respective states and submit. If you look at right to work laws in different states, the language is identical. This means we have essentially corporations dictating legislation to states. So listed here are some of the anti-union corporations who have had associations with the American Legislative Exchange Council. Note Sodexo and Aramark are on that list. And how many of the largest US corporations fund anti-union legislation. So again, going back to the Walmart map, it's important to see again the contrast between right to work, Walmart states here, and non-right to work public union states, and also the billionaires who fund this project towards march towards privatization. In right to work states, though, the wages are so low that most workers either work multiple jobs. I know we're doing a one job is enough campaign. Many unions are doing that. Or they have to apply for and receive state medical and food benefits. So taxpayers end up supplementing the low pay and working conditions of the largest and wealthiest companies. So basically, this is their agenda, right? Their agenda is to break public unions so businesses can get their hands on public money. So let's look at the differences between public workers and private third-party contracts. When I was a principal in New Mexico, the custodian had been there for over 15 years. He knew the families, and if he couldn't fix something, he knew where to go. His own kids went to the school, and he took a lot of pride in his work. And so these are some of the custodial duties not performed by cleaning contracts or cleaning companies, third-party contracts. And unfortunately, I found out that the school the Pueblo bus drivers, the District 60 bus drivers had already been outsourced to a company called Student Transportation of America, also known as Student Transportation Incorporated. They are the two largest contractors handling public school transportation nationally. And so far, I read about 30% of districts have started outsourcing transportation, but many are finding it costs more in the long run, so they're canceling their contracts. So let's think through some specific reasons why a district might consider outsourcing to a third party. We know that many public schools have been facing budget cuts. And then we have the taxpayer bill of rights turning public services into enterprises. And some of it's just short-sighted planning or incompetent administration. So let's look at some of the perceived benefits, what they might perceive as a benefit to a third-party contract. Could be, right, immediate cost saving by contracting for food, large things like food, transportation, or maintenance contracts. But we know that the danger to the community is that contractors reportedly lowball their prices for the first contract when bidding for new contracts. They're finding that they're promising much lower costs than the actual results. There was an analysis of 29 districts that privatized their transportation services, and it showed that the district experienced a 26% increase in transportation costs in 5 years after contracting, compared to a 6% increase had they kept it in-house. And most of the jump took place the first year afterwards. So another reason that they might want to privatize is perceived benefits, outsourcing, the infrastructure, like the maintenance of the kitchens or the transportation facilities. But the dangers to that, and also the drawback of that, is you have private companies now owning inventory paid for by the public. And it could create monopolies like it has, like Sodexo, Aramark, Chartwells, which means less competition. We also know that Sodexo health insurance is notoriously expensive. So many of the people who end up working for Sodexo can't afford their health insurance. They also tend to, employ people for less than full-time or less than even part-time, so they can get away with part-time benefits. And then another reason they might want to outsource is thinking that a third-party contract makes a third party more liable. However, outside contractors don't have the same benefits or protections as public employees. So state liability means state oversight. So you'll have more folks, within the state inspecting. Less regulation and less control obviously means less safety. And then one of the last reasons would be a perception that, contracting out could possibly save with wage and benefit cost savings. However, that all it means is more, we know that all it means really is more low wage jobs in the community, higher turnover, which we've seen, and less stability in the public schools. So, one of the biggest questions I have is, how is sending local tax dollars to a multinational corporation like Sodexo, Chartwells, or Aramark preferable to local control over critical public programs like food services? So, this is the agenda. The agenda is the privatization of the public good, and by public good, that means public schools, lands, parks, hospitals, universities, and pensions. And the result is less local control, a decrease in public services, deunionization for sure, and de-skilling and deprofessionalization of jobs like, in teachers and nurses. So we have a really big fight when you consider the differences between the money spent by corporations for their political, funding, and labor's, in contrast with labor's spending in elections. But there's still more of us than them. So I'd like to end with some good news, and that is the 2020 Public Worker Collective Bargaining Act, which is great, and that could counter some of the Tabor restrictions. And then the new largest employer, which is a private employer, I should say, marijuana growing and manufacturing, it looks like they're working towards unionization as well. I was surprised to see that Tweed Leaf Grow employees don't have health care despite working 40 hours a week or more. Finally, the PRO Act is coming, and it is the most important labor legislation since the National Labor Relations Act. It's passed the House, and it'll give more teeth to deal with unfair labor practices. It will end strike replacements. It will provide more sanctions for union busting, like what happened with Amazon. And the best part is it will appeal right to work. And finally, stop that ridiculous independent contractor crap. Okay, so that's my presentation. I will stop screen share and open it up for panel discussion. So anyone who wants to begin, please introduce yourself and respond either to the presentation as we consider how we might protect the public good here in Pueblo, including District 60 food service workers. Also, at the end of the rally, Debbie will share important information on an upcoming rally. Okay.
I'll go ahead and start, Leslie, if you all are cool with that. I'm actually really excited about this panel. Everybody on this panel I consider a friend and a union sibling, so really excited to have you all here. My name is Josette Jaramillo. I'm the president of the Colorado AFL-CIO. Most importantly, I'm also the president of AFSCME Local 1335 at Department of Human Services and a Pueblo resident. And a District 60 alumni. So I found your presentation really interesting. It's always interesting to see those numbers in front of you, organizing for labor and working on the labor side. We know that in our hearts, but to see it actually put out in front of you by numbers, I think is really important. So thank you for presenting that information, Leslie, and thank you for helping with this effort. I'm a public employee. My 8 to 5 job is Department of Human Services and Child Welfare. I understand that people making less money in my community means less money in our general fund. So that's less money to fund services like child welfare and our roads and bridges and our public works and our parks. All of that stuff is funded through tax dollars. So more folks making money in our community means more money in our general fund. So we certainly always want to make sure that we hold on to those important jobs. But most importantly, I think for me is para for these workers. And for those who are watching and those who are on this panel who don't know what para is their retirement. So folks who contribute to para and can pull out from para don't actually qualify for Social Security. So when they turn age Social Security, they can't collect Social Security. It's para only. And that was the agreement that was made with some public agencies back when Social Security was first being formed. So I couldn't imagine working a lifetime in an industry and paying into my retirement, and then just one day, because there's a political decision that's made, and make no mistake, this is a decision that will be made, a deliberate decision that will be made by lawmakers and folks who are hired by lawmakers. So one day, the fund that you have paid into for your entire career is gone. For me, that is the most egregious thing that we could do to these workers, is completely destroy their pension. Now, if everything remains the same, wages remain the same, hours remain the same, we continue to provide the services that we are to the community, that one single issue should be enough for every single member of that school board to vote no on privatization. Is protecting somebody's right to retire with dignity. So that's always been something that's really compelling for me. I think as I'm getting older, I'm still not that old, but as I'm getting older, I am realizing like, hey, I gotta like plan for my future, right? Because I wanna like one day, you know, sleep in till 8:30 and stay in my pajamas till noon and retire and live that good life. I don't know what the heck I would do if I retire, but certainly that is something that should be on every single person's mind, is that pension. The second thing is, You know, these folks have literally risked their lives. They have risked their health. They have risked the health of their family and their friends to provide a key service to our community when things were feeling very bleak. Our food service workers put themselves on the line to make sure that our kids in our community had food. Because what each and every food service worker in District 60 will tell you, that they know the kids who only eat at school. They know the kids that need to come in on those Friday food banks when you all send backpacks with food to those kids home so they have food for the weekends. You all know those kids. You all provided that service for our community. And the way we're going to thank you is by stripping your pension. I think that's a disgrace. I'll get off my soapbox now and let some of our other panelists talk.
Thank you.
Can I jump in then? Okay, so my name is Denise Torres. I am a recently retired teacher, elementary school teacher here in Pueblo. I'm also a Pueblo native. And as soon as Debbie Nash began talking and mentioned the pension, and just like Josette and the para, I hadn't even thought of that. But then that's the instant thing I wrote down, like, wow, because I was able to retire this year because I didn't want to mess with this crazy COVID year, because I knew I had para. That was my insurance and my stability, and I had that. And I just can't imagine now all of a sudden them not having that. So I agree, that's just, you know, just a horrible thing for people to have to start thinking and start all over and work till you're 70, whatever, you know, and it's just a horrible thing. But what I wanted to present as a panelist here is the understanding that our food service workers are such a vital, important part of the school community, because they get to know the kids, they know them on a personal basis. You know, we have kids sometimes who are having issues, and you always tell them, go to the person that you feel most comfortable with, or you have a relationship with. For some of them, that's the lunch lady. And why not? You know, that could be their neighbor. That, in fact, the lunch lady at my school where I just retired, she and I grew up together in the East Side since middle school. I mean, we go way back, and you know, when you know these people and they're your neighbors and they're your comadres and your vecinas, you know, it's important. And Pueblo should hold to its values of being a community and a community oriented, and how vital and important these workers are. And it's not always about numbers. And the other thing I wanted to bring forth is the flip side of that, because I saw after the transportation was privatized, it was horrible. We have 2 buses that come. I was at Baca Elementary. And so the buses, once we switched over to whatever STA, whatever it is, the turnover of bus drivers was ridiculous, like over and over. It's brand new bus drivers, so they didn't get to know the kids. They didn't even know where their drop-offs were. We had a kindergartner get dropped off at the wrong place, and the family, all of us going crazy looking for this little kindergarten student because the bus driver didn't know them and just dropped them off wherever. And, you know, like those kind of things happen. And you're more worried about saving a few dollars versus the safety of your children, and, you know, the food safety and all this stuff that the food service workers are already so good at and know what to do. And so, you know, just that sense of community and understanding that, and that when I was talking to Leslie, I know part of it is cultural, but that's a value. It's an asset that we have as a Pueblo community, and we need to uphold and appreciate those values and continue. And it just saddens me that we're always looking at the bottom line instead of people and human beings and children and what's best for the entire community as a whole, rather than just that bottom line. And so I also say, now that I am retired, my paycheck's not tied to some school board members or administrators, so I could say whatever the heck I want now. So I will. And so please use me as a veteran teacher and a community member. I also represent El Movimiento Sigue here in town, and we are ready and willing to do what we have to do here to help save the food service workers and our neighbors and our vecinos.
Can I go next? Hi, I'd be glad to speak next if that's okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Justina Carter. I'm a teacher also at Baca Elementary, a former co-worker of Denise Torres. And I'm also the executive vice president and lead negotiator for the Pueblo District 60 Teachers Union, the Pueblo Education Association. And so I'm glad to talk a little bit about the importance of being a union member as an employee in this district. So our union membership is super important. Our management's interests always are different than our labor workers' interests. And we need to be able to protect our interests. We need to be able to have some support for and work together. We need the security to know that someone has our back, that someone's going to stand with us. We need ways to address any concerns that we have and get answers from our bosses, from our district that we work for. And we need to be able to fight the status quo as we move forward so that our people can have the security that we need, so that we can have safe workplaces, so that we can have continuing education for all of our employees. We learn new things from each other, from our unions, from however we need to. And in our schools, it is so important to have our consistency for the people who work there. Our kids need to know who those people are. They know who the people are at the front desk. They know who the people are who help them get their food. They know who the people are who help them tie their shoes. They know those people, and we know that our kids. Now, all of the employees in our schools and in our district are, you know, we are close. We support each other and we need each other. And for our district to decide, you know, for the teachers union, we had to fight against outsourcing of some of our positions just last year. And we have an MOU in our contract right now that says that they wouldn't outsource teaching positions. They've done it with the bus drivers, they did it with the custodians, and it didn't work out. And then they took back the custodial employees as part of our district because they already have had this experience. So whatever their plan is, wherever they think this is a good idea, which they don't even say, we all know that it's the wrong idea. It's not the right thing for our students. It's not the it's the wrong thing for our students, for all of our district employees, all of our educators, and it's certainly not the right thing for the nutrition service workers. And so PEA is really glad to stand with all of our other people in our district, all of the labor unions, all of the labor people in our district to strongly oppose any outsourcing.
Thank you. I like the little clapping hands. I'm new to Zoom and I don't see where those are at.
Yeah.
They're under reactions.
I'm learning. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
But we
My
said
pleasure.
we
I
have
hope one of us is going to talk about collective bargaining.
I certainly can. You know, as workers, I think one of the most powerful tools that we have available to us is the ability to collectively bargain. Very simple definition of that is, you know, we're coming together as a group to talk to our employer. We have a formal process for that through our union, and it's kind of spelled out in our contract how that happens. But we're able to address a whole host of issues through that collective bargaining process. And then we're able to set up an avenue to address issues moving forward outside of contract negotiations. So we do a labor management meeting every month, and we get feedback from our executive board, we get feedback from our members, what's going on the ground. I can tell you most higher ups, whether they're supervisors or their administrators, have been off of the job for quite some time. And you lose a little bit of what it feels like to be in the trenches and to be on the line, so to speak. So it's helpful to have folks who understand what's actually going on in the field and how we can improve it by folks who do the work. So that is a powerful tool. It's also powerful to partner with our management to talk about the resources that we have at a national level. AFSCME is a 2.6 million member strong organization. We have access to resources that District 60 doesn't. We have access to resources that Pueblo County doesn't. 2.6 million members is a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot of members. I can't count that high. But it's an opportunity to resolve some of those issues on a really low level and to really find out what's going on, you know, in District 60 with the kids and with the staff. You know, how can we implement changes to keep kids safe, to keep staff members safe, to keep families safe during COVID? That was one of, you know, our top issues in the last year. And I'm certain it was one of the top issues at D60. How do we service our community and also keep ourselves safe and keep our family members safe? So yes, collective bargaining is the American way. I have a t-shirt around here that says that. But really, like, when you dumb it down, it is just employees getting together to talk to the higher ups, to their managers, to their administrators, to their school board about what's actually going on in the field.
Thank you, Gisette. I wanted to also kind of piggyback off what Justina said about the ancillary, you know, food workers, custodians providing stability to the school community. And so when I was a principal, you know, it's true. I would, the actual head of the school, or the actual person that knew everything, was the secretary, right? The secretary had been there forever and knew how to get things done, and was the heart of the school in so many ways. So when, you know, she would kind of jokingly say, oh, you know, administrators are going to come and go, but we are here. You know, the secretaries, if you really need to get something done in a school, you for sure ask the secretary. I also wanted to share a story about what happened in Hawaii during the pandemic. You know, that's public schools and there's some charter schools, and due to the Hawaii also has collective bargaining through the state, and the food service workers are represented by United Public Workers. And unfortunately, when the state passed a charter law, it shifted the employer from the state to charter boards. And as a result, some charter schools outsource their food service to either a private caterer or a private company. And during the pandemic, it came to light that many of the places where they outsource their food, those folks didn't have sick leave. So because they didn't have sick leave, it became really a public health issue, a public health and safety issue for, you know, to provide meals, because we still had the same thing, you know, providing meals for folks at home, but the charter school food service program were just unable to provide, you know, the meals for their students. So as happened here, who came to the rescue were the public food workers with the training and the infrastructure and you know, the heart to do all that. And so one of the things that really stuck with me when I first met Debbie was she said, you know, we weren't working from home. We were here in the kitchen. And so, you know, that's something that we really need to thank and honor and recognize them for. And that's just, you know, they should not be being threatened with privatization for that. We should be honoring and recognizing and thanking them. Okay, who else would like to share? Unless Debbie, you want to share on upcoming rally, like what where we're headed next?
Sure, I sure can. So the next board meeting is going to be April 27th. And if anybody wants to, speak to the board on our behalf, they take the first 10 callers. Justina did it for us. I get to personally thank you now. Thank you. Josette did as well. Thank you. We are going to have a face-to-face rally on Monday, the 27th or the 26th, the day before the board meeting. We're going to meet at the Northside Kmart, right there on that corner where we can hit a lot of traffic and let people know we're here. We're out here on the line, let them know what's going on. And then my understanding is the way the process goes, they will probably have to decide come their May meeting or.
Debbie, what time is the rally on the 26th?
Oh, I'm sorry, 5:30.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, they'll probably have to decide according to the bid, the proposal that they put out for these companies to bid on. I believe it closed April 15th. So they will look at them now and then decide by May. And if they do outsource, we will be taken over by July 1st. So, I don't know.
So is there, how would you recommend with the board? Should we send emails to the board?
Yes, definitely, please. Especially, how we have helped people. Squeaky. It's kind of hard for us to make a point to people when they have their meetings from home. I'm hoping this will reach more parents so they can hear what's going on. We don't have PTAs, we don't have PTOs going in the school right now because of COVID, so we can't contact parents that way. We have to rely on getting flyers to them and, as much as we can, and word of mouth, basically.
I would think that it's really important and imperative that we continue to email, call the school board members. They are the ones who will ultimately make that decision as to whether or not food services gets privatized.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I agree. And I think it's so important to remember that the right to collectively bargain our salary, our benefits, our working conditions, a way to address grievances when they happen, a process that's in line, that's laid out for us to know about. It's so important for workers to have that kind of stability, to have some kind of assurances that they're safe at their job. And if they aren't, there's a way to solve it. And to know that we're being treated as fairly as our colleagues that are doing our same job. I'm so disappointed that that we have to keep coming back to our district to ask them to treat people fairly, but I'm glad that we can do it together.
Yes.
I just wanted to chime in too. It also reminds me when the teachers were on strike in 2018 and how much support we had from all of the school workers, and Pueblo as a whole community. And so we need to reciprocate that and have your backs, just the way our community had ours. And I think that's a great thing about Pueblo. I think that will come through because we definitely saw it for the teacher strike.
So, anything else?
Any final
Anybody else?
comments?
I want to thank everybody. This is overwhelming for me. I'm going to start crying. I just took over the union president seat like in October. So I am learning the ropes as we go. What a way to get thrown in. But the support that we have from everybody is just so overwhelming, and we really do appreciate it.
Okay, so I guess with that, we'll continue to post updates on upcoming rallies and upcoming events on in the group page. And thanks again to everyone for your time. And
Leslie, thank you so much for setting this up and all of your help, and everybody else as well. Thank you.
thank you. Take care, you guys.
Bye.